Hey, Coach, thanks for checking out this video. We're going to be talking about linebacker reads in the 4-3 defense system. And there's a few things that you know about the 4-3 defense that we'll talk about as we go through. It's not just as simple as this is the right way and the wrong way. There are certain things that make these key reads the best for the 4-3 as opposed to maybe some other defensive systems that you might be running. And we'll talk about those as we go through the podcast today. This is Football Coaching Podcast, Season 6, Episode 12. And you can check out the podcast in audio form also by downloading them from iTunes. We're on Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, wherever you check out podcasts. You can get the podcast there as well and take them with you on the go without the video. But of course, we'll have some video here, draw up some things, so get a little extra with it here. Any links to talk about will be down below in the description. If you like more videos like this, then be sure to like and subscribe. We have new videos coming out just about every single week for our subscribers on YouTube. And be sure to check out joedanielfootball.com. We have the 4-3 defense system there. If you want to go deeper with the 4-3 defense system, you can do that at joedanielfootball.com. And you can also go to 43defense.com/podcast to get access to a free 3-video series that'll teach you the foundations of the 4-3 defense system. That link is in the description down below as well. Today we're taking a look at the 4-3 defense system linebacker key reads. Key reads, linebacker reads. Hey, we figured you guys out. You know, I do this kind of for a living, and so I know what people search for. People search for linebacker reads all the time and linebacker drill. I don't know why linebackers are such, nobody seems to look for defensive line or like DB. It's like, well, everybody's going to be out there. I hope everybody can do this stuff pretty well, but we don't see as much of it. But linebacker reads, everybody seems to be looking for linebacker reads. So we're going to be talking about the 4-3 defense system linebacker reads, but really I think it's important to point out reads aren't that different from one system to another, except for it's really going to be based on your back end. So I'm going to talk about something really important to consider when deciding, do you focus on guard reads? Do you focus on backfield reads? Do you read a two-man surface? Do you read this? Do you read that? Whatever you want to read, there's some important considerations and things that I really only figured out learned in the last couple of years. After having run different systems for a long time and kind of figuring out, okay, this is working, but not really having a specific reason why. I kind of picked up those reasons why later on. I want to let you know that if you want to learn more about the 4-3 defense, of course, all during Season 6 of the Football Coaching Podcast, we've been talking about the 4-3 defense, and you can go back and check out those podcasts throughout Season 6 there at joedanielfootball.com. iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you really enjoy these podcasts on the 4-3 or anything that we do, I really appreciate if you go and leave a review in iTunes especially, but wherever you listen to podcasts, if you go and leave a review, it's a huge help to get the word out about the podcast. So please go and do that if you haven't already left a review, and make sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss future episodes. They come out every week, and I've also got a second podcast at JDFB Quick Clinic, or the JDFB Quick Clinic. That's a shorter podcast where I answer questions from listeners. You can send those questions to me on Twitter at footballinfo or email joe@joedanielfootball.com. And yeah, while we're talking about other stuff, be sure to check out the Football Coaching Podcast Network, footballcoachingpodcast.com. Got new stuff coming for you here. I know we've got one coming up soon, and then I think we'll continue to do a lot of different things. There's a lot that's going to be happening in the first few months of 2020. That I'm excited about, but also kind of busy. I mean, there's a lot happening. I should mention one more thing, housekeeping. February 7th, 2020, Baltimore Glazier Clinic. We'll be in Baltimore for the Glazier Clinic. I'll be speaking on Friday night, February 7th at the Glazier Clinic, talking about the 4-2-5 defense system. We're talking about the base foundation, personnel, run fits, some safety drills, safety work there as well, and an open Q&A at the end. So be sure to check that out in Baltimore on Friday night, February 7th, 2020, at the Baltimore Glazier Clinic. February 22nd, the Championship Football Coaches Clinic is going to be at L.C. Bird High School here in Richmond, south of Richmond. And you will not far from Richmond. How's that? And I will be speaking there sometime in the morning. I'm pretty sure. 4-2-5 defense run fits. We'll be talking there. It'll be basically an hour-long talk. Of course, umbrella principle being a big part of that. Maybe we'll just slide some chairs around and run the umbrella principle, whatever. But we'll be talking about 4-2-5 defense run fits there. And that'll be the topic of discussion for for that great clinic. Coach Troy Taylor puts it on, has been putting it on for years. And it'll be at L.C. Bird High School, Saturday, February 22nd, sometime in the a.m. I don't know exactly when yet, but before noon, I hope, because I got some other stuff to do in the afternoon. But I'll be hanging around there during the first part of the day anyway, for that as well. So be sure to check that out. Championship Coaches Clinic, Championship Football Coaches Clinic. You can look for it on Twitter. Is probably the best place to look it up. I think it's Championship Coaches Clinic or something like that. But I believe that I will confirm Championship Football Coaches Clinic. If you Google Championship Football Coaches Clinic, that is what comes up. I can't give you a really nice, smooth, URL for that. 'Cause it's kind of a long URL. The Twitter account, the CFC Clinic is what it is, Championship Football Coaches. So the CFC Clinic on Twitter is where you'll find that as well. Great price. It's a great clinic. I've been to it for a number of years. And so you will enjoy that one as well. Here in Richmond, February 22nd, 2020. So be sure to check that out as well. And I'll be speaking there. So, all right. Housekeeping is over. We're going to get into linebacker key reads for the 4-3 defense system now. So when we talk about run fits in the 4-3 defense system, I want to talk about a couple of very important considerations that you need to make. First of all, the big difference is, do we want to read the offensive line or do we want to read the backfield? Which one do we want to use as our read? It's very important that you understand this. And what one read is not superior to another. Anything that you can teach better is going to be better. So if you have a better grasp on one versus the other, if you've been doing it one way for years and years and years and it's working, there's no reason to change it. What I think is funny when guys will defend to the death one way of doing something, and then it's like, well, what was your record last year? Like not even what your record was, okay? Are you satisfied with your linebacker play? No, they need to do that. They need to read faster. I mean, maybe you should change the read. Like don't just blame the kids. Like let's be coaches. Let's problem solve. So I don't think that there's one that is superior to the other, but I think in certain situations, one is going to be superior to the other. And the fact is this: you must use both eventually. In other words, you cannot play football in a vacuum. You must, if your primary read is the guard, obviously, you must eventually pick up the backfield and what they're doing because they've got the ball on run reads, right? Or pick up the quarterback on a pass or a receiver on a pass, somebody who's going to catch the ball or throw the ball. Like, I'm not going to sit there and stare at the guard the whole time. Well, I'm keying guards. He hi-hat, so I'm going to just drop and stare at the guard and see, like, what are you going to get for that? Obviously, you must pick up other things. We're not robots. We have to see the whole field. This isn't a robotic game. It's not a simple game. We overcomplicate it in a lot of ways, but it's not simple in that you can just, I got to adjust some lighting there. It's not simple in that you can just be one or the other, do one thing or the other, and never have to worry about anything else. So, eventually, if you are reading backfield, if you are reading backfield, you've got to learn, it's going to take time, you've got to learn to see pulls out of the corner of your eye. In other words, you still have to read through, what we teach is to read through the hat of the guard to your backfield read, right? And if you see it, and we'll talk about that, how we do it, but if you see a pull generally 99% of the time is way more accurate. A lineman pull is way more accurate than anything you're going to see out of the backfield. Running backs lie, guards very rarely, because there's always, I know somebody sitting there going, well, influence trap you, influence pull in the wing tee. I agree, it's a real thing, but it's not a major concern. It's not something that happens a lot with a lot of teams. I mean, you know, it's quite frankly a rarity. Okay, it's uncommon. I've probably had it a couple of times in my entire career, and one of the times I swear they were just better than us, and they were just putting it on film. Like, We're just going to get this on film so that somebody else sees it, because they didn't need it to beat us. That was that was a time where I was like, I can't believe they're up. Like, it was almost like a mercy thing. Like, these guys must not be reading anything, so we'll just pull our guards away from where the play is going so that they won't block them. But of course, our guys actually do read. They just weren't good enough. We weren't doing a good job with them. They weren't good enough for that team, I can tell you that. So, yeah, I mean, they don't lie. The linemen don't lie very often. So they're going to, even if you're reading backfield is going to give you 80% of the story, but that other 20%, we always just go 80 and 20. That other 20% is going to come from the pulls of the linemen, and I need to see those. Important for you to understand. This is one of the things that I've learned in the last few years that I thought was really, really important for just getting a solid reason for why some things were working and some things weren't, and that is this. If you are going to key backfield is a more aggressive key, and you will not be, you will be fast to where you're going, but you will be wrong sometimes, because even with the fact that you're picking up secondary keys with the line and things like that, you will be wrong sometimes, at least in your first couple of steps, and you will be potentially you'll be vulnerable to counters, especially misdirection. Therefore, if you are going to key backfield and really focus on the backfield, I recommend that you do that only in a 2-high quarters coverage specifically. So, with the 4-3 defense system, where quarters is one of our primary, it really is the primary coverage. I think if you're not going to run a quarters package, you should be in a 4-2-5. If you want to run an even front. That's not to say like, well, you shouldn't run a 33 or you shouldn't run a 3-4. I'm saying if you really like the 4-3, but you want to run it as a cover 3, I would just get into a 4-2-5. That would be my recommendation to you. So 4-3 quarters is perfect with the backfield read, and that's the thing that we teach in the 4-3 defense system is a quarters coverage package. Split field, whatever you want to call it. If you are in a single high, cover 3, cover 1, your free safety in a single high is running the alley. He is not in position to cover as much for mistakes. And if your backside force player takes off, you could get into some trouble. I don't want my weak safety in the 4-2-5 as an example to be responsible for cutback B gap. If I run out of a 4-3, that guy can take off, the will backer, let's say, who's B gap responsible, backside B gap on a strong side run. He can take off and fly. And my weak safety or free safety can hang back, and he can cover me if we get eaten up on some misdirection plays. So I've got a little safety net there. To whereas I think that the weak safety in the 4-2-5 is a lot of times too close to the line of scrimmage by comparison. So he's definitely, if you're like 3x3, he's definitely, and I see these guys playing at the line of scrimmage, he cannot help you on a B gap cutback. I like to play him 5x5. I think that's a little bit better. But I like, when a guy's playing 9x1, 9x3, he's a lot more likely to be able to help out on it. So a quarter safety lets you read backfield more. Backfield is a faster read, though less accurate a lot of the times. Now, I've tried to adjust the guard read. When we read guards, it is if he pulls, follow. If he pulls, follow him. If he doesn't, fill. That's basically the read. So it's a pretty fast read. I mean, either that guy's pulling or he's not. But still, with backfield reads, it's very natural to just follow the backfield guy. Like, he goes that way, you go that way. It's very natural. He steps, you step, you can mirror step, and all these different things. And it's a little bit faster read. So what we use, because of the 2-high safety structure, the quarter structure in the 4-3 defense system, and because of the fact that we have the protection of that guy behind us, we are going to read the backfield with secondary key. Primary key is the backfield. Secondary key is pulling linemen. We don't care about anything that linemen do, really, Now, can we see through hi-hat? That's higher level stuff. Can we see hi-hat? Higher level stuff. Generally, we're going to pick up hi-hat. We're going to pick up more of the backfield action. We're going to see that back set up to block or to release on a route, and we're going to go, okay, this isn't a run, and we're going to drop to our pass route. It's going to be a little bit slower. Eventually, once you've mastered the backfield read, you start talking more about the guard pull. Once you've mastered the guard pull, then down the road, and I'm talking minimum 6 weeks into the season, probably your second year of playing in the system, talking about as a player, your second year of playing in the system, that's when I'm talking about let's work in that hi-hat read. I'm not trying to rush to. I'm not talking about, a lot of people hear like that comes later and they're like, okay, so I do that the second week of camp. No. Later. Get great at the backfield read. Then get great at the backfield read with the secondary guard key. Then, and I'm talking great, I'm talking 95% proficient. Not able to do it in a drill. I'm talking about 95% in the game. And then you're going, man, we're always in the right place, except we're a little slow when we see the hi-hat. You're going to take a step back when you add the hi-hat in. Are you comfortable taking a step back right now? That's why I say it should be year 2, because then I can work with him in camp on that, adding that in, and not week 6 and saying, well, it's okay to take a step back on our run reads in this, league game. I don't want to do that. When you add things in, every coach seems to know this, but then just thinks it doesn't count in other places. Like, think about when you go through your 3 days in helmets, then you add shoulder pads. Like, your kids forget. Like, they don't execute as well the day you put shoulder pads on. They don't execute as well the day you go full pads. They take a step back when you add something in, and that's just equipment. So what about when you add in new things like, well, we're just going to evolve the system. You are going to evolve the system. But when you give a quarterback 2 reads in the progression, it's very easy. When you throw a 3rd read into a progression, it's like, well, now I gotta check to see that guy, right? It's not just boom, boom, boom. They're not robots. When you add in something else, a linebacker reads like a hi-hat, and you say, hey, now if you see this, you've got to do this. And it's like, well, now it's another if then. And you're going to take a step back. But we read we read backfield in the 4-3 system with the secondary key being the guards, primarily for pulls. And I would back off. I would really focus on what we call the in-at-out drill. I think I got it from Brophy a long time ago. The in-at-out drill that's in 4-3 defense system and all of our systems. And really focus in on that for a while before I start worrying about guard reads. And then that, there's a little less time between those. It might be like 2 or 3 weeks, because I feel like the backfield read is pretty natural. It's a lot harder if you're teaching guard reads to get them to ignore the backfield for the first 2 steps than it is vice versa. So I can get the backfield reads pretty good, pretty clean, work in the guard reads, hopefully like before the first day of, first week of the season. And then, because you should be able to, most places, unless you're in Massachusetts, Washington, different places where you're just allowed no contact, and I don't know all the state rules, you should be able to, get a lot of this worked out in the spring and the summer with your guys, as far as backfield reads and even into guard reads to an extent. So that's what we're going to be doing for our purposes here in the 4-3 defense system. And again, I'm not saying this is the end-all be-all of linebacker reads. I'm not saying it's the only thing you should do in the 4-3 system. But I got to draw a line somewhere, and so this is what we do, what we teach. So when I first started teaching even the 4-3 defense system back in 2007, started learning it, studied everything. I mean, was in Glazier clinics, I had videos, must have spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars trying to learn the 4-3 defense system from wherever I could. I visited a couple of different colleges. I mean, we were everywhere learning the system. Still the best videos were those, I know I talk about them a lot, those Tommy Tuberville videos on the Miami Hurricanes 4-3 front 7. Fantastic videos. They didn't do this. I don't remember how they read. I read the Tim Simmons, it's one of the few books, Coaching Football's 4-3 Defense. Tim Simmons book. I read that. They did a 2-man surface read. But what I found most teams were doing was a backfield flow read. And so what we came up with, or what we used, was a backfield flow read where there were 4 types. This may have been from Tuberville, I can't remember. There were 4 backfield flows that you would see. Okay, you would see the 4 different backfield flows that you could see were basically, that's not what I want. There we go. The 4 different backfield flows that you could see were basically hard flow, fast flow, split flow, and dive flow. And so hard flow, and what we ended up with, this was really complicated. Okay, remember that I used to be really stupid, but I wanted to sound really smart. And so we had hard flow, which was inside the tackles, and I don't think I made it up. I think I took it from probably some college coach who said it worked. Was inside the tackles where both backs, and all of this stemmed from a 2-back set. Hard flow was both backs running inside of the tackle. Then we had hard flood was weak side. So flow was strong and flood was weak. What sense that made, I don't know. It should have been like floss and flow. Like floss would be strong and flow would be, but that was before floss meant some stupid dance from Fortnite or whatever. I don't even know. And then fast flow, which is probably the one thing that I have maintained out of all of this. Fast flow was when both the fullback and the tailback were running outside. And the way we differentiated was if you could see his numbers, it was hard. If you couldn't see his numbers because his shoulders had turned, it was fast. Now I'm like, okay, it's either fast or it's not. Like, you can't tell the difference. I'm sorry, dude. If you can't tell the difference between that guy's running between the tackles and that guy's running to the numbers, you're fired. You're out. You cannot play this position. I don't need to give you a clue on this thing, but we had to have, it had to be clinic talk. Everything had to be clinic talk. When I was doing this 10 years ago, I thought everything needed to sound good in a clinic. It needed to make you sound smart. So we had fast flow and fast flood. I don't know why. Then we had split flow. Split flow was when the fullback went one way and the tailback went the other way. Again, out of an I formation. And this was your normal counter look. So when you got a counter play, you would get the fullback filling for a pulling guard, right? That was your normal 2-back counter, your counter tray type of look. That's what you would get. And so that was split flow. And so when we got split flow, we needed to pick up the lineman. Well, later on we figured out we've got to pick up the lineman anyway, so who the crap cares if it's split flow? And I'm not saying anybody who still uses this system is dumb. I'm saying everything in my world has to be as simple as possible. And then we got dive flow, which was the fullback running hard flow, or one of the backs running hard flow, and one of the backs running fast flow. And that was called dive flow because it was dive option. Okay? And so they had to figure out, oh, this is an option. And once they figured out this is an option, but they were going to do this. And I went to a clinic talk from, I believe, Joe Cullen. I think that's right. He was coaching linebackers at Valdosta State, I think, at the time. And he taught this idea that they don't have any linebacker reads. That all that their linebackers know is when they go into a film room or when they go to play against the scout team during the week, they are seeing a play unfold and they just see the picture. And I was like, that sounds cool. Here's what I've learned. First of all, it was too difficult a concept for our players to learn to diagnose 8 different types of flow. At one point, I moved to lineman reads where we had to diagnose 10 different types of lineman reads. On paper, everything was right. I get a lot of coaches. This is getting too caught up in last man with the chalk and not caring or not understanding, or just being generally young and dumb. And I'm old and dumb now. Not old, but I'm older and not as dumb. But generally getting caught up in the last man with the chalk game, not caring about what the actual product on the field is, thinking that napkins are going to win a game and not 16, 17, 18-year-old men, boys, who are very young and dumb, that I had to have something on paper that was going to cover all of the ifs, thens. And in what I do now for a living, I constantly get and hear if thens. Well, coach, but how do you stop? You don't. That's a great play against this. So if you're listening or watching this and you're thinking like, we'd destroy that with, I'm sure you would. Good for you. We'll call something different. It's not that hard. Okay. You have to adjust. You have to punch and counterpunch. Someone was asking, one of my friends was, we were texting during the Kansas City and Houston game, NFL game. And he was saying, he was asking, or we were talking about, is this just because, Houston got up big and then Kansas City just rolled them and reeled off like 6 straight touchdowns. Was Houston just playing terrible defense, or was it were they outmatched or this or that? And I said, I think that Kansas City is really good. And Kansas City is really good. Like, I don't look at this anymore as like, well, this is a massive mistake of one thing or another. No, it's, we came up with a plan because there's something we needed to take away. We took it away, but they were able to do other things, right? If you beat a team on page 1 and then they go to page 2 and you adjust and you beat them on page 2, and then they go to page 3 and you adjust and beat them on page 3, and then they go to page 4 and you adjust and beat them on page 4, and then they go to page 5. And look, eventually, if they can do every single one of those things, we just run out of answers because they're just better than you. That comes up. That happens. That's part of football. The beauty of the game, of 11 on 11 game, is that eventually you cannot stop everything in 11 on 11 football. And I think that's true of 12 man, and I think it's true of 8 man, and I think some of the other versions kind of lose that. But the point is, all of this was what we started out with, and what I decided was this is too freaking complicated. So the Mike linebacker is keying the fullback. And this goes back to the very origins of the defense. The Mike linebacker is married to the fullback because the 4-3 defense system, as we talked about in the first episode, I think, of season 6, the Mike linebacker is responsible for A-gap strong. He's also primarily responsible for B-gap weak. Okay. He is married to the fullback because this was originally developed to stop wishbone option. It is probably the best front for defending the option. Not that you change to the defense because you're playing an option team this week. That's not how it works. But if the best team on your schedule is a great option team, you may want to do this. It's not that the 4-3 front is so great. It's that the principles in the Miami 4-3 defense, which is the basis of the 4-3 defense system at JoeDanielFootball.com, the principles of that are great for stopping the option. The front itself is not particularly special. Okay, the alignment of the players is not. It's the principles behind it. So the Mike linebacker must key the fullback because the fullback has those quick hitter plays to A-gap strong, B-gap weak that we must hit. The tailback does not hit A or B gap fast unless the fullback is leading for him like an ISO, right? Otherwise, he hits it a little bit slower when he does that inside zone type of play. So the Mike linebacker is married to the fullback. Now, there is a play where this can give you problems, but remember that reads are not 100%. They're just the first two steps. Okay, they're the first two steps. And so I can adjust with those reads, because I'll tell you right now that inside zone, if you use the fullback to kick out the backside end and use zone, that front side A gap could be open, and the Mike has got to see what's happening, that the H is not getting the ball to pick up that backfield flow eventually, okay, to pick out what happened. But his primary key is that fullback, okay, and that was something where we did have to make an adjustment. And the Mike, what I look for in a Mike, if I've got somebody new to the position, he's gonna be keying that. What I look for in a Mike, and what's gonna make you really good, is to have an instinctive Mike linebacker. Your Sam and your Will, not so much. But remember, I talked about the idea of seeing the picture, and I was like, that's so cool. What I realized was that players that are playing at a top level, in this at that time, one of the best Division II schools in the country, players are playing at that level. They are instinctive linebackers. Linebackers don't get to a high level that don't have the ability to see the picture. Okay. So the best Mike linebackers that I've had have been instinctive. They see it. They know what is happening. They see things that you don't see, or that maybe you don't even see, unless you're up in the box, you can't see it from the sideline. I've had 4 or 5 of these guys. They just know what's happening. So it's not a rare, it's a rare quality, but it's not like it never comes around. Just off the top of my head, I can think of, and when you get these guys, you start them from the time they're a freshman or a sophomore. They're starting for you. And I can think of 1, 2, 3, definitely 3 off the top of my head that would cover 7 or 8 years of football. And I can think of 1 more since that time who probably fits into that category. They're not quite as instinctive, but I probably had 4 who were all 3-year starters or 4-year starters, and so it covers 10 years of football, and this is only 11 years of time. So there's only been a couple times where I had to start somebody who didn't fit that mold. And if you face an inside zone team, you've got to work on it. Like, a team that runs inside zone. It's not common now, and I'm going to talk about one back. You may be sitting there going like, none of this matters. Who's in a 2-back formation? But we're in an I formation to start teaching this. And I think sometimes guys will get annoyed by like, why are you in an I formation? Because it's easier to teach from there and then go to the 1-back sets. Okay. The Sam and the Will backer, their primary key in the backfield is the tailback. So in an I formation, they're keying the tailback. They are looking at that guy. They are getting their information from him. In a 1-back set, especially under center, and I'll talk about gun formations in a second, zone read type of stuff. But in a 1-back set, everybody's keying the tailback. Pretty simple. That's pretty obvious. Like if we're going to key backfield, there's 1 back there. We key him. He's the key. The Mike has to be different because of inside trap, because of dive on a midline option, that type of thing. He needs to be ready to hit that right now. But the Sam and the Will backers, the outside linebackers who are in 50s, basically 50 and a loose 50, they are going to be keying the tailback as their primary guy. The fullback very, very rarely will carry the ball to their area, to the area that they are responsible for defending. It's pretty unusual. Now, all of these guys need to be seeing through the top, the Radell or shut or whatever is on the front of that guard's helmet. So as we do this read, we want to see through the top of that helmet. Very important. I am not going to teach this, and I've got to adjust some of our installs as I go back and work on the 4.3 for this year, for 2020. I don't want to do this day one. I used to always do it day one. But I want to be able to be in a position where I can look through that top of the helmet, and they don't have to see the Riddell. It's just like kind of like an aiming point. See it through their peripheral vision, whatever the case may be. But I want them to be able to see if that guard pulls, because a guard pull will take them to the play, and it will override what they are seeing. That is the only thing that will override their backfield key initially. So backfield, and I'd say that's the only thing. Key reads are only the first two steps. Then you got to go play football. You got to figure out what's happening on. Ultimately you're filling open windows, right? So that's what matters, is you're filling open windows, open doors. And so, for example, and the mic doesn't look through any one particular helmet or whatever. He's looking to see if somebody crosses the center. So if he sees somebody cross with the center, that's the key to him. So, for example, if he were to see the fullback heading to the strong side, he steps with him, but he sees the strong side guard pulling, crossing with the center, then he is going to immediately put a foot in the ground and redirect and look for the first open window on the other side. And so that's going to tell him where the ball is going. So he's going to react to that guard pull. The outside backers are particularly thinking more about, now they will respect inside guard pulls because it's a clue. It's another hint as to what's happening. But they will really respect outside guard pulls. If they get an outside pull, they can take off. So if they are reading through and things are a little cloudy, now usually an outside guard pull is going to be accompanied by, fast flow type of look. And I do still use the fast flow language, even though we're not worried about it. We're just, hey, you're tracking this guy for the first two steps. He's giving you a clue. If I see a fast outside guard pull, then if I'm an outside linebacker, I can take off and scrape what we call tight to color, tight to the next good guy, the guy with the same color jersey as you. So if the defensive end were fighting the reach on the edge, I'd want to scrape hip to hip with him as fast as I can, and get to where I can continue the spill in our run fits. So that's what he's looking for. If the Mike linebacker sees an outside pull, he will freeze for a second. So if he got an outside pull read, now under center, it doesn't mean as much to him because this doesn't happen much. But in gun, what we started getting was that quarterback reading a midline where they would pull the guard outside and then read on the with the quarterback in gun. He would read on the 3 technique, and if the 3 technique went out there and chased the guard pull like he was taught to do, the quarterback from gun would keep it and just run straight ahead, and it was essentially a quarterback midline. Well, the Mike backer, we said, hey, when you see that, you've got to freeze and check quarterback so that if we get that, you can come down and make the tackle. You can't just fly out of there. Okay, so that's the basics of the reads and keys. Oh, I should talk about what we tell our kids with the read on the guard. And I've used this for years, and I got it from somewhere else. I don't remember who I got it from, but it's the pretty girl in the mall theory. Okay, if you haven't heard this one. The pretty girl in the mall is basically this. When you're walking through the mall, you're hanging out with your friends, walking through the mall. Do kids still do that? I don't know. But they kind of understand this when we talk about it. So you're walking through the mall, all right, and you're just hanging out. And you're not really looking for anything. You're not specifically looking for something, but this really pretty girl, okay, this hot girl walks by on the other side of the mall, and you're just like your eyes just snap to that, okay? That's the pretty girl in the mall. You're not necessarily looking at the guard. You're not staring at him. You're not keying him. He's secondary. But if you see a guard's ear hole running across your vision, look at it, figure out where it's going. Okay? Follow it. Don't follow the pretty girl. Okay? I mean, maybe just don't get caught. Like from a distance. Not stalkerish, but like kind of puppy love thing. Not stalker. Okay? Can't be crazy. Don't be crazy. But follow the guard. Okay? If If you see a guard pull, it's pretty girl in the ball. It's something that you didn't expect to see, but oh, there it is. I better follow it. Okay, I better go with it. And again, it is everything is about. Oh, and then on the tailback reads, especially for the salmon wheel, I kind of mentioned it. That's where the fast flow, hard flow comes in. If I see fast flow, let's say I'm the Sam backer and I see fast flow, then I'm going to immediately go tight to color off the defensive end. Okay, continue the spill. Leave no air to my inside, but continue the spill. The Mike backer will eventually take the run through in his run fit. Again, once he confirms nothing's happening inside for and it's a split second hesitation, and then he goes, and we continue the spill. And it's essentially a gap exchange. Everybody goes one gap over. If we got hard flow, which is inside flow, downhill flow, or flood or whatever, if you want to use it. I don't use flow and flood anymore. I just say, hey, it's, inside, hard, or fast. If it's inside, then you would want to be filling the first open door inside of the tackle. So depending on the play, if it was inside zone, the Sam backer would be filling the C gap, scraping paint with the tackle. The Mike backer would be filling the A gap, scraping paint with the guard. The Will backer would be playing cutback B gap. Okay, so of course, if it was power, where we were getting down blocks and the defensive end was scraping down, then the Sam would end up tight to color off of the defensive end. So a little bit different there. But just filling the first open door on his side is the key. Filling the first open door that he's got on that side. So that's how the backfield reads will work against a two-back formation. And again, against a simple one-back formation, especially like quarterback under center, one back, then everybody's just reading that one back. Pretty basic. I mean, but we start off, it's easy to start off with the I. No, we don't see a lot of I formation. No, of course not. Not many people do, but it's the starting point for teaching, and I found it works best as a starting point. I used to think like, well, if we're seeing all spread, we should start off teaching the spread, and then it was like, there's just an awkward starting point, and so I formation was the perfect starting point for our teaching. Okay, the important thing to talk about now is the gun. How do we get into a one-back gun, option, zone read option, power read? How do these things affect what we're doing? That's going to change a little bit of what we do as far as our backfield keys. Obviously, if you're keying guards, it's fine. You just keep on doing what you're doing. You pick out what's happening in the backfield, and everything works itself out. The good thing with the 4-3 is that this is option is option, and you're perfectly fine with the way that you're going to be defending the different looks that you'll see here. But what we'll do with the keys in a one-back set, all that we're going to do is we're all going to key on that one back, knowing that as he comes into the mesh, we need to be looking for what's coming out to us. Now, I've played with, okay, you key the R, and then you've got the Q, and so cross-keying with the quarterback and the R, I've played with that. But what I found was easier was just everybody key the R. We don't ever make the quarterback a read. We don't ever make him a key read. Okay, so everybody keys the R, and then as the R goes into the mesh, the Will knows, as an example, if he's on the side of the R and the R goes into the mesh, the Will knows that he's looking for who comes out of that mesh, which a lot of times in your zone read option is your quarterback, right? The quarterback will keep it, and the Will have our natural gap exchange or tango or whatever you want to call it, and the quarterback will end up being taken by the Will backer. The safeties still have the force, and the backers are still the spill. Really, he's playing basically the alley when you get to that situation. So he will end up on the quarterback. And so that's how that read will work. Originally, it was like, well, why don't we cross key it? And then teams start doing the thing where he steps in to the mesh and then steps back out. And we saw a lot of that, and it wasn't, or just even straight ahead, almost like a pistol, almost straight ahead. And so it was just like, just pick up what comes out towards you. So if it goes into the mesh, you look at the mesh and see who comes out to your side. Power read, for example, though, is taken care of with the Mike backer. So that's our your, what you call it, your, hesitation on the outside fast flow. So he would step, and the Mike backer would see fast flow from the R if he's headed towards the strong side. He would step to that, and as the quarterback goes in to read the defensive end, who would actually be coming down for the quarterback too, or in great shape against this, but the Mike backer would be checking that quarterback and would be coming to fill on him as well, and basically continue the spill, probably fit wherever as needed, fit off, tight to color, if the end closed down A gap all the way. But that's how we would handle a power read. So it works really well. I mean, just as a whole, guys, the 4-3 system, and again, Miami 4-3 defense system works well against the option. The 4-3 over front is nothing special. So if you run a 33 stack and you've got an option and everybody's one gap, slanting, all this sort of stuff, and you have an option team coming in and you go, well, Coach Daniel on Football Coaching Podcast said 4-3 is really good against the option, so we're going to install the 4-3 over. No. It's the principles of the defense, and you cannot install them in 1 week. If the best teams in your area are running wishbone and split back veer, you might want to be a 4-3 team. Okay? That's the important difference. And I say might because, again, I got to have those safeties. We went through the whole personnel package in the 4-3. If you don't have those guys, you don't have those guys, and you're better off. The front itself is not what makes it special. Okay, so against split backs, we are going to cross key the backs because basically everything that happens essentially will work off of some sort of a cross key. And I love split backs. I think it's great. The Mike, I'll just tell the Mike who's the primary guy, who's the guy who's going to pound it inside. Then that's the guy that you need to look for. When I've got an instinctive Mike, I just say, hey, read the mesh. You've got the guy who can just look at the picture, let him just look at the picture, or say, hey, just read the mesh, take the guy that, comes out that you need to handle. Those are instinctive Mike backers. And they're going to be able to see that happen a little faster. But a lot of what you get with the split back gun option type of teams is going to involve cross-keyed looks, or you're going to get fast flow by both. You might get like a speed option type of look and those kinds of things where you want to be keying the front side back, but they're pretty rare. And you could just say, hey, key the guy. If your guy goes into the mesh, then pick up the other guy, that kind of thing. That'd be fine as well, or pick up what's coming out to you. But I just found a cross key worked the best with this. And it's really the only time that I've used cross key heavily. I've tried it in some wing tee type of stuff, but this is the only time where I've really felt that cross keying was the right thing for us in handling, how we read something, was that split back type of look where we would cross key it for zone read option type of stuff. Now, one other thing that if you're looking at the video, or if you are looking at diagrams of the 4-3 defense system, or you're checking out the video series, it's available at 43defense.com/podcast. One thing that you might notice is that the Sam backer with no tight end is split out, and it very much becomes like a 4-2-5 type of look. And that's another reason why offensive line keys really didn't work great for us. I have used the Mike with a center read while giving the Sam and the Will, because remember I talked about the issues that we were running into with that fullback read. At times I've had the Mike key the center. If we played a lot of 2-eye, that would be better, but we don't. We play mostly a shade or a one technique, a weak shade on the center. And so it's a little bit tougher to read that center, but I've had centers I've had Mike linebackers who understood that read and really liked it, of just basically playing off of his butt or playing his block the way that they saw it. But the Sam being split out like that, we don't split the Will. The Will has basically a max +2. He's not going to go wider than 2 yards outside of the outside foot of the defensive end, because usually when he's got a number 2 receiver, even he's going to be on the short side of the field most of the time. If it's a passing situation, obviously he would go wider, but most of the time I want to make sure that he's in the box so that the Mike, on an inside zone type of read, the Mike can plug that A gap strong and the Will can plug that B gap weak if we need to, even though the Mike is technically filling both of them. So, but that Sam walks out there, right? And that Sam has got to be the guy And I've experimented also basically with pulling both guys out, with pulling the linebackers over for that. The Sam from that position, he can't really key like a guard key. And so he was having to adjust the read too much. And so that was another reason why I found that keying the backfield worked really well for him.
And be sure to check out some of my other videos, including other videos from this podcast. And I've got a lot of other great coaching videos on this channel that you can check out that are shown down below here. Also, if you want to subscribe, make sure you don't miss any future videos. Just click on the logo on the top left of the screen.